You've got $2 million, but you and your wife don't agree. Can you retire yet? If that's your scenario, listen to this because we take you through this step by step to help you come up with a clear roadmap to help you get to and through retirement.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from Secure Your Retirement. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you receive alerts when they come out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
Merce and I are excited to have a conversation with you today on a topic that I think is something that we run into all the time, and that is basically, can I retire or not? But here's the specific question. I saw this article, and when I saw it, I went, man, this is what we run into all the time. But here was the article. The question of the article is, can we retire with $2 million when couples don't agree on the plan? That was the premise of the article. So let me get it's a little bit of a setup. And then basically the way we're going to do this particular podcast today is I'm really going to just kind of ask Merce how we would handle this. So I'm going to kind of set it up, and then I'll ask Merce some questions as we go through this. So here's the setup. Couple has $2 million saved. So sounds pretty good on the surface. But they have a good lifestyle. They have made good money. They are able to travel. They have the freedom to do those things. And in this particular case, the husband says, hey, I'd like to retire. He's been reading what are called FIRE blogs, which stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. So in this case, we're going to say that the couple is 60 years old. And they say, look, I want to go ahead and call it. And I'm pre-Medicare, I'm pre-Social Security, so that's a little expensive sometimes to go ahead and retire at age 60. But he basically says, look, I'm going to do it. In his mind, he says, we'll cut back and we'll spend less so that we can go ahead and retire. The wife, though, is saying, hey, I kind of like the travel that we're doing. I kind of like the freedom that we got. I like the flexibility of knowing we can go out to dinner when we want to go out to dinner. And I think it's a little early for us to make this call. And I don't know that the numbers will support it. And so we're going to kind of talk through this scenario and how we would deal with it when it comes down to this. So, Merce, I know that, you and I are sitting down with couples every single day, individuals and couples, whatever the makeup of the family might be. And we're sitting down and we're having these conversations, and the conversations always start with, and I always tell this, it doesn't matter whether a person has 1 million or 10 million. The question kind of comes down to this idea of, do I have enough to retire? So when you sit down with a couple or a family, an individual, and that you sitting there, you look at their work and they got $2 million, they got it saved, and they're thinking they want to go ahead and retire. Kind of take us through that thought process you've got and what type of conversations you're trying to have with people.
Yeah. So I think it's really important to understand, I think the driving reason behind wanting to retire. So the FIRE thing is a popular acronym, Financially Independent Retire Early. But kind of getting to the understanding of, well, why do we feel like we want to retire early? And oftentimes in that conversation, what we find is that, well, there's a stressor amongst the person's job or their work life, or there's there's an imbalance on work and personal, and they want to find a way to fix it. And then this idea of, well, can we just call it quits around the board, across the board on everything? Will it work? And so I think driving to understanding why do we feel like we need to retire early, especially if it's already creating a little bit of a tension between the husband and wife, one saying, I don't think we can do it, I don't want to give up stuff. The other one saying, I feel like we need to make it work. And in the back of their mind, they're saying, we need to make it work because I'm sick of working, because I don't like my job. And that's not an uncommon type of scenario. So I think understanding the why behind this retire early idea is the first part. And then we start to, work through what a financial plan looks like and understand what possibilities do we have. A lot of times it does come down to, I'm sick of my job, but I still need to make some type of income so that I can enjoy some of those creature comforts. Yeah, maybe I have enough savings to kind of get by, but do I really just want to get by in retirement and give up some of the fun stuff? Or am I okay finding another alternative to drive income that's going to let me pay for the fun stuff or pay for the health insurance because we're retiring early? So I think understanding the why first is big, and then running some numbers and seeing, well, what is actually possible in your scenario, and that's going to help us make better decisions down the road.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, in all these cases, I've seen many times somebody just wants to get out of that corporate job that's giving them stress. Actually, we had one client I think of that he was really dealing with some difficult health issues and, heart issues and those kind of things. And he said, this job is killing me. He decided after we ran the numbers to go ahead and do the part time. He came back in 6 months. It was like a completely different guy. His health was better. He said his cholesterol was better. His high blood pressure was better. He had lost a bunch of weight. Everything was just way better in his life because he got rid of that stress. So, all right, we got this husband. He's reading these fire blogs. He's thinking, I'm going to crunch the numbers. I'm going to really cut back. And I'm not, I don't want to think about how I want to think about retirement. And the wife is like, I'm not giving up my vacations. That's not what I want to do. So here we've got a big difference between the two. We got one person who's like, I'm ready to quit it right now. I got another person who's like, I'm not giving up the vacation. So that can be a contentious scenario. So how do we help people sort that out?
Yeah. We've said this for a long time, that financial planning, there is a big element to financial planning that is math and numbers and understanding of investment strategies and products and things like that. But there is another element of it being an art, and it's a big emotion that we're having to deal with this idea of not generating any more income, living off of what we have, and is it going to work? And that's where a lot of the emotion comes into play. So, with the idea of trying to retire earlier than expected, you have to start thinking about the plan. So say we walk through that plan like we should have in the previous scenario, and we see what's possible. And now we start to talk about, okay, well, what do we potentially have to give up, or what are our non-negotiables, right? If I'm going to retire early, what do I need to make sure that I'm going to continue to get in my retirement life, whether that's travel or the memberships or the hobbies? What do I need? What is a non-negotiable for me? I'm never going to give this up. If we're going to retire early, we need to be able to afford these things, right? And so understanding what those things are to you, how much they cost, and then where potentially can we make cuts or adjustments or generate more income to make it all work. It's a balancing act of this conversation, because retiring early, while it sounds fantastic, there's a lot of things to think through around the investment strategy, around your income plan, your withdrawal strategy. Also, big time thinking about healthcare prior to Medicare, and that world is very difficult right now. So, understanding, well, what do we have? What do we need to have? And what's that going to cost? And are we willing to give any of that up? If we're not willing to give any of that up, what are we in a place to cut so that we can make it all work? And then how important is it really to us to retire early if it's going to be stressful? The idea of retiring early is you get rid of the stressor that's in your life. But if you retire early and it's still stressful, does it make sense? So those are some of the things that we would want to be thinking through. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the things we've seen on this many times is when we do work through a plan and we kind of go through the 5 critical areas that we talk about all the time, which is, risk investments, optimizing their income, their health care, their taxes, and their estate plan. When we go through those things and we kind of lay it all out, the stress does come down. And maybe, in this particular case, the husband who has got this problem goes, wait a minute, maybe we don't have to go down that way. And maybe she looks at it and goes, oh, I didn't realize that maybe if I cut back over here, I could still get my vacations. And we get rid of this tug and war back and forth. All right, let me kind of tell you the next part here, Merce, because I think this one kind of made me kind of chuckle for a second, because we've seen some folks who think this is just the easy way to do things. So in the article, the guy had a friend, and the friend had started doing this idea of day trading, and they were kind of being successful. Maybe they've been doing it for a day or two, and they hit a couple of wins. And so he goes, wait a minute, if I take some of my money and I put it over here and I day trade, maybe I could make money that way. How would you talk to somebody who's thinking, here they got a good amount of money they've saved, $2 million, and they're thinking, hey, I'm going to go out here and try to conquer the stock market and day trade?
I would say you want to be very, very careful. It's kind of like this, as you get closer to retirement, and this isn't everybody, but just the the averages would say that as we get closer to retirement, we start to become more and more risk averse. Not that we can't handle risk. We start to realize the impact that risk is going to make or take on our portfolio. Right? If I lose 10% when I've got $100,000, that's one number. If I lose 10% when I've got $1 million, that's a significantly larger dollar number. Right? So not that we get any less risky, but we start to understand risk a whole lot better as we approach retirement. What this person is saying is, well, let me get into options trading. Let me try to conquer the stock market, and that's going to be my income driver or my revenue stream for retirement. That's a risky area to be in as you're walking into an area of life where you want to be very safe and secure and sound and predictable. And so while some I'm sure have done it very successfully, I guarantee you there's more out there that have tried and failed at it. And I'm in this business. I don't trade options. I think it's a very difficult area. Does it work well? Does it work well for some very specific strategies? Absolutely. But do I do them myself? And I know this world. I don't do them. I'm scared of them. And it takes a lot of monitoring. Takes a lot of understanding of how the options markets works, and also how to make money on that in that world. And then paying attention to the individual stocks that the options are being carried on. So it's a world where it could work, but you're really increasing your risk. And if we're trying to retire early because we're stressed out, well, again, this comes back to bringing stress back in. Because what if one of those options doesn't hit the way you want it to, and now you've lost a bucket of money, or what if you have to end up selling some stock because the options didn't work out, and now you've got a big capital gains tax issue to deal with that you weren't anticipating. Well, all of that could completely wreck your year. So if it was up to me, I would say first, let's do proper planning before we start to go after aggressive strategies to make the plan work. You don't want to have insane or very, very strong rates of return to occur to make the plan work, because we can't rely on rates of return. We can rely on sound, proper planning, and annual conversations around the financial plan itself.
Yeah, we sometimes people come in and they want fancy, difficult scenarios, and we talk about it all the time. Hey, look, when it comes to income planning, we want it to be predictable. We're not trying to create something that's going to have any kind of volatility to it. We want it to be kind of boring. We want to make sure it's coming in and it's going to be there. And by the way, by having that predictable income, it's going to take your stress level way, way down. So I guess as we kind of come here and we think about this particular couple, Merce, and imagine ourselves in this meeting, and we're trying to reconcile between these two different ways of thinking, how would you maybe help kind of think through this idea of helping them reconcile, maybe help them think through the goals? Obviously, we're not marriage therapists, but at the same token, we're trying to help them think through this idea of retirement. How would you help them reconcile?
Yeah, it popped in my head. The word therapy popped in my head because eventually that is what some of the conversations end up being, is a little bit of, let's make sure we're all talking the same language. And what is it that's your goal? I would say to one spouse, and then what is it your goal, and what do you want to see out of your retirement, right? And sometimes they don't verbally say that in front of each other, and it takes them being in front of an advisor or a trusted person for them to talk in a circle around what goals are. And sometimes they didn't realize there was a misalignment. Right. So I think it all starts with having those open, honest conversations of, if we are going to try to retire early, first of all, are we both on the same page that we're going to do what it takes to make it work? If you're both on the same page that we do want to retire early, and we're going to cut costs, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that for this desire of being financially independent, well, then it seems like, if the numbers work out, it's very doable. But if you've got friction between the two of you, well, then that friction, unless you resolve it, you talk about it, it's never going to go away. And in fact, it could fester. And then the caution that I would bring towards anyone who's trying to retire, especially significantly early, the way the world works today is, if you've got a gap in your income, if you got a gap in employment, and you tried to retire early type of thing, and it didn't work out, and you try to go back to work after having a 5, 6, 7, 8 year gap of employment, it becomes very difficult to re-enter into the workforce. So definitely, if you're going to try to retire early, make sure you and your spouse, or whoever you're working with, are on the same page that, yes, this is doable and we're going to do what it takes to make it work. You want to be certain about that before you leave the workforce, before you leave the ability to make income, because it's one of those where it could be hard to turn backwards and restart.
Yeah, I think that I will sum it up this way. We talk about our peace of mind pathway. Our peace of mind pathway is really designed to help people in this exact scenario. We talk about our roadmap. Our roadmap is made up of those 5 key areas. It's risk management on my investments. It's optimizing my income plan. It's looking for things like unplanned health care, taxes, and estate planning. That's how we build that roadmap so that we can get to and through retirement. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, this is kind of where we are right now. We're trying to figure this out, and maybe we aren't seeing eye to eye. If you are interested, we are glad to give you a copy of our new book that has just come out called Peace of Mind Pathway. It is all about this entire structure. We'll give you a free copy. All you got to do is just reach out to us here at Peace of Mind Wealth Management. Just an easy way to do it is go to pomwealth.net. Go to the Contact Us page and say, hey, I'd like a copy of your new book. We'd be glad to send that out to you and make sure that you can talk through these areas, because this is what we do every single day. This is how we've been doing. I've been doing this for 25 years. Merce and I have been together now for almost 14 years coming up this year, all about helping people through this whole process. So we appreciate you listening. We hope this has been a little bit insightful. As always, we hope you have a great week. We'll talk to you again next Monday. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Secure Your Retirement. If you would like to learn more, we have actually created an online course called 3 Keys to Secure Your Retirement. This video course helps you to think through all the different steps as you get ready to plan for and live throughout retirement. You can access this by going to our website, pomwealth.net. In addition, you can also subscribe below to our podcast called Secure Your Retirement.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.